So we are about to begin third chapter. So I don't think we necessarily need to cover any context because the previous two chapters were pretty theoretical, and I think they set up the foundation about how Austrian economics is different. So I think only Gregor. I don't remember if Gregor was. I don't think you were in the last session. So, just to give you some quick context, if you need it, we discussed how Austrian economics. So, this book actually does not mention anything about Austrian economics. It is only talking about economics as a subject itself, but it begins with the same assumption or the axiom that Austrian economics takes, which is that human action is purposeful behavior, and human action, when we say that its purposeful behavior is trying to create value or trying to be better off than what it was before, and it's all individuals acting in their own ways trying to achieve the highest value, and through that the emergent phenomena is what is known as the economy. And economics is the study of studying that. It's the study of how we can create a prosperous world and a life for ourselves. So it's all individuals acting on their own value based hierarchy about how they think something is valuable over every other thing that they choose to do. So yeah, we'll start with third chapter. So Setu, are we recording this session?
Yeah, we are recording the session.
Great. Okay. So I'll begin. We begin this week. I'll just go. So can you see my entire browser or just this tab? I've just started a new tab just to make it.
We can see the entire browser.
Okay, I've started a new tab. Okay, so let's start. How to do economics? Economics is often faulted for being ideological, for promoting free markets. This is a misunderstanding. The free market in economics is a model, an analytical tool. It excludes complicating circumstances and influences and allows us to study core economic phenomena on their own, so that they are not mistaken for other effects. In economics, we are interested in understanding the nature and relationships of economic forces. In other words, we exclude things that hamper the economy, such as regulations that impose upon people's behavior and therefore economic outcomes. The result is an economy where only economic forces are at play, a free market. So the next paragraph actually gives a very good analogy just to understand free market, to define it or to conceptualize it if somebody might not be clear to them. The free market model serves the same purpose as studying objects in free fall in physics. The free fall model excludes such things as air resistance in order to study the effects of gravitational pull. It would not be possible to study gravitational pull without separating it from other forces that also have an effect on objects and may add to or subtract from the effect of gravity. Economics uses the model of unhampered or free market in the same way to study economic forces without the influence of other things.
Shreyan,
We must know how the economy itself works before we can study influences on it.
Hey Shreyan,
Yes,
we can't see the screen. I think you are reading somewhere else and the screen is open somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Wait.
We can see the whole browser. We can't see your separate tab. We can just see the whole.
Okay, wait. I'll share my screen again. Is it visible now?
Yeah, now we can only see the book and nothing else.
Okay, I'm really sorry, guys. So yeah, the first paragraph just basically defines what free market is, and to give my interpretation, it's to study economics as a analytical tool, or to keep a model in mind to study economics, which means that you exclude things such as regulations, which are by definition just imposing restrictions on people's behavior and thereby economic outcomes. So for the purpose of understanding economic forces in and of themselves as a phenomena, we need to study the free market or or conceptualize economy without the impact of other factors such as regulations. So I was about to read this, and I think I just read this, and it gives a good analogy to understand what free market is. The free market model serves the same purpose as studying objects in free fall in physics. The free fall model excludes such things as air resistance in order to study the effects of gravitational pull. It would not be possible to study gravitational pull without separating it from other forces that also have an effect on objects and may add to or subtract from the effect of gravity. Economics uses the model of unhampered or free market in the same way to study economic forces without the influence of other things. We must know how the economy itself works before we can study influences on it. So yes, this begins with the presupposition that we exclude anything else other than economic forces by themselves to study economics. So for the purpose of this, it defines only regulations as an external factor. And I think it's a very intuitive understanding that anything that tells some human to not do certain thing will affect the economy because their value decisions will be different. So for understanding economics, we assume or we begin with the example of a free market. Economics promotes and advocates free markets as much as physics promotes free fall. Economic reasoning cannot do without the free market model. So I think if you've studied basic physics in school, you will know that whenever we try to understand force acting on a body, we hey, did someone join? Hey Harsh, hey Delson, hey Mango.
Hi.
So hi, you just joined a few minutes late, so I don't know if I'll be able to give you the entire context, but we begin chapter 3 now, which is how to do economics, and we just defined free market. And just a quick recap is that free market by definition mean that we try to study the economy without the influence of external factors, which in this book so far is the example of regulations. So regulations are just restrictions on people's behavior, which of course will affect the economic outcomes because individuals are not able to act in certain ways, and that affects the economic outcomes in the economy. So this last paragraph summarizes what we have discussed so far. Economics promotes and advocates free markets as much as physics promotes free fall. Economic reasoning cannot do without the free market model. So in physics, if I was just saying that if you've studied it in school, you'll remember that we study effects of every force in vacuum, or I think vacuum might not be the right phrase, or we call what's called a free body diagram, and we study the effects of that force without taking into account other forces. So it's just a good example to study how one thing, how cause and effect work in physics. And similarly in economics, we study the effect of economic forces in and of themselves without the external factors affecting it. The meaning of exchange. And if somebody's joining us for the first time, I think Harsh, I don't think Delson also joined us in the previous sessions. Just a quick context that this session is supposed to be discussion based. So feel free to interrupt me, share your thoughts, ask questions, or have a free discussion. I'll continue. The meaning of exchange. Economics relies on economic reasoning, the use of logic to figure out the why or why not and when or when not. It is how we make sense of what we see and uncover the underlying economic processes. Let's illustrate this with the example of a basic exchange transaction between two individuals, Adam and Beth. So this book now goes on to give an example which is very obvious, very intuitive, but it's trying to highlight a deeper phenomena which somehow because it's not something that is taught to us or it's not something that we articulate every day has somehow missed the understanding of most people. So all of us here understand Bitcoin to a certain extent, so we know that the predominant monetary policy of the world is so far from a fixed supply or from a free market that somehow even such a obvious concept is missed or it goes over most people's head. So I'll start with the example. Let's say Adam offers Beth an apple and Beth gives Adam a quart of milk in return. There are two ways we can analyze this exchange. One is to study it empirically by observing the exchange in real life and collecting objective, that is measurable data before, during, and after the exchange. Using these data, we can then describe what took place and look for an explanation. There is no need to get into the specifics to see how this method is unsuitable to understand the meaning of exchange for economic reasoning. Even studying the empirical exchange in detail, we could not uncover why the apple shifted from Adam's into Beth's possession, why the milk moved the other way, and or even if those two transfers are related to each other. There is no meaning to the observable data. They cannot tell us anything in addition to the bare observable facts of who possesses what and when. Strictly speaking, the data cannot even tell us there was an exchange. So it's like how I think of it in a framework is that we can only, using numbers or using just third party observation, we can only make any deductible assumptions or some conclusions about physical movement of goods and services, but it does not give us any information about economics, which is the study of wealth or prosperity or value, which is as we discussed in the previous session, it's subjective. So just observing how Adam and Beth are exchanging apples and milk does not really tell us about anything about wealth creation or exchange of value. So these are something that you cannot observe empirically. Economics is more than offering descriptions such as Adam has an apple and Beth has milk, and that a minute later Beth has the apple and Adam has the milk. It is about understanding that this was an exchange and what exchanging means to the participating parties. We know it must mean something because they chose to do it. The exchange was not simply the outcome of certain external stimuli, exchange is not automatic. So this might this might be a little out of context, but I think if all of us here are on the same page about human will, that all of us act out of our own volition, then we can say that the decision that we make when we exchange something with someone, it's something that is not necessarily an outcome of external stimuli. It's not as if something happened and we were forced to exchange something. It's a conscious decision that we engage ourselves out of our own volition or out of our own freedom. But to study this, we must reason from our understanding of what Adam and Beth are doing. In other words, we recognize, using what we call a priori understanding, that both of them are in fact acting, and therefore they are trying to accomplish something. Human action, as Ludwig von Mises reminds us, is purposeful behavior. So yeah, this is where we come back to the understanding of economics in this book or in this context, that we study economics through an outcome or through an emergent phenomena of human action, which is by definition purposeful behavior. So yeah. With this understanding, we can easily see that this is in fact an exchange. Adam traded his apple for Beth's milk. Because Adam and Beth exchanged good, we also know that unless one of them was coerced or defrauded, they both expected to be better off with what they received in exchange. So they exchanged because Adam values the milk higher than the apple and Beth values the apple higher than the milk. So for this example's sake, if we assume that Adam and Beth are both not frauded or they are adults acting out of their own volition, then we can safely say that they are both valuing the other thing more than the thing themselves, the thing in their hand themselves. So again, just stressing on the point that this is an active decision made by an individual and not some third or empirical observation that we can make out of that. This conclusion might appear obvious, and it should. We all have this basic understanding of human action as purposeful undertaking to attain some end that we expect to be of greater value. We act because we want some change and because we think that change will be better in some sense. Based on this basic understanding, we make sense of Adam and Beth's exchange. We might not agree with their valuations, but we do not need to. We still understand that voluntary exchange must be based on parties' double coincidence of wants, that both Adam and Beth expected to become better off from the exchange, or they would not have chosen to do it. So, yeah, it's the assumption that the free market is making, that all humans are acting out of their own volition or they have purposeful behavior when they're acting. So, and any voluntary exchange is based on the principle of double coincidence of wants. That Adam wants exactly what Beth is willing to offer, and Beth wants exactly what Adam is willing to offer.
I think this chapter also kind of refutes the claim that things have inherent intrinsic value, because like an apple or milk might not have inherent intrinsic value. It just depends on intrinsic value, something that is arbitrary. So Bitcoin or anything for that matter to have value, to have a price associated with it, it need not have inherent intrinsic value. If somebody believes that Bitcoin is worth 60,000 US dollars and they're willing to pay it, they're willing to swap 60,000 US dollars in exchange of Bitcoin, then for them, Bitcoin is worth that amount. So things are priced in accordance with what the buyers are willing to pay, and things do not have inherent intrinsic value.
I was excited for today's session because today we hit INR at the highest of Bitcoin, and interestingly, today's session was about how to do economics and price and value. So yeah, so
But
Faisal,
we're still far away from Nelson's prediction.
what?
4 days, 4.5 days to go.
Yep.
That was memes page, so yeah, hyperbole. So anyway,
No, you are accountable for it.
If anything goes wrong, nothing will
If
happen.
anybody buys here thinking it is going to 1 million, and if it doesn't go, like people sell their houses or something, or their family doesn't buy, then you're in trouble. You're in a suit.
No problem. I will buy their bitcoins. They can exchange. Anyway, that's all. I think that this discussion, right? This discussion where they are saying that both of the parties are benefiting. So this is something that we don't state very clearly in regular economics classes. I think that's what they mention it explicitly like this. Usually, in the kind of fiat model, for example, macroeconomics, right? Whatever that I have read, people will, the authors, they will act like they can predict something. right? They will think like people are forced to do something like that. So this the statement that the Shreyan just read so far. It's like completely new. I mean, contradictory to the usual beliefs. That's what I think.
Truly, truly.
Delson, if you have INR to buy more Bitcoin, you're a bear.
What?
I mean, if you still have INR left in your account to buy and you have not yet bought, you're a bear. I'm just kidding.
Oh, bear market. Like, I mean, I don't live alone, man, so I can't take stress.
So I tried to leverage this cycle to orange pill my sister, and she ended up making the decision to buy a plot of land. So even as a passionate Bitcoiner, I failed to orange pill my own family. So yeah, these.
They won't. They won't realize. They will still think that they will buy Bitcoin a little bit cheaper, or they still think that Bitcoin will go down. Right? I'm still having conversations. People will still arguing that what will you do if Bitcoin was worth nothing in future? They don't understand. They don't have the capacity to understand anyway. That's what it.
True, true. So I think I remember one thing that Raj has told me, which really hit well or deep with me, is that Bitcoin is a minimum 200-year-old experiment. It's like it's a social contract, or as Faisal put out, that there's no intrinsic value to Bitcoin, or for that matter, anything. So a lot of people, so there's this Mises regression theorem, if you guys have read about it, that any money first needs to have intrinsic value, which means that it has to have other value than being money itself, or to have monetary premium on it. So Bitcoin, when it started off as money. Or some people, so Arman the Parman also wrote an article about how that is incorrect, because somebody is exchanging value for the electricity burned. So even in that theorem, you are exchanging, there's still some physical difference being made. So yeah, regardless, that what Raj told me was something that I really, because I was in a hurry to just get to the Bitcoin standard. It did not make sense to me how people are so blind to the fact that money supply is increasing. So yeah, Bitcoin is it's a value based system that all of us are out of our own volition agreeing that this should be 21 million, this should be peer to peer, another consensus that we come to.
I have one more point to make about, like, you mentioned that your sister is buying real estate. I think
Yeah.
in a world wherein debt is not available for you to buy Bitcoin, but debt is available for you to buy real estate, and that real estate will be available to be put on mortgage to buy Bitcoin, it's not that bad a decision.
Right, makes sense.
You just make sure that you don't pay that debt
But
very easily.
And one more thing, like people don't. I mean, the level of scrutiny people apply for Bitcoin, they don't do that for the currency that they're currently country hold, right?
exactly,
So
yes, that's
yeah.
true.
I mean, I ran into an argument like 3 weeks ago with one PhD in economics. Okay, she's a lady. She's like 45 years old. She argued that India was still the currency that India prints, right? It was still based on the gold reserve. She argued. She told me that you are just googling something and talking bullshit. I was telling that, I mean, they were talking about some stocks. Okay, I mean, it was my like tennis club. So everyone, we were chatting that Sunday, right? So we were talking like that, and she was like, she was like sure, very sure that, but till May the election, the stocks won't go down. I said that they can keep pumping keep pumping the money to buy the stocks, right, to regulate the price. She was like, no, they can't do like that. Okay.
Yep.
And then later I googled and showed to my friends that the gold reserve thing was abolished in 1912 itself, 12 or 20, when British was under, when India was under the British kingdom itself, right? And the reason is that I believe that during that time only, like British defeated Napoleon, right? And during that time, the Rothschild, right, the first descendant of Rothschild, he's second son of Rothschild, I believe. They have 4 sons. So he actually bought all the stocks in UK stock pretty cheaply because he spread the news that British lost. So he gained so much control over the British government. Then wherever the British Empire went, they had the control. They abolished the gold reserve everywhere. Even now, that's what they try to do in the Gulf countries, right? If you look at Gaddafi and all those stuff, they want. I mean, they try to go. I mean, steer away from the petrodollar. They will just destroy them. and people are willingly ignorant about this. Okay, they're willingly ignorant about this. That's what astonishes me to some extent. Yeah.
So
Just 2
coincidentally,
years.
1856 was the first freedom struggle, right?
57.
57. So around that time was when England moved to gold standard, and around the same time, a lot of Indian gold was transferred back to UK, and India was in silver back then. So it's very coincidental that
Wait, why
that's
was India on silver standard and not gold?
So they took a bet that silver will be a better standard. In fact, Britain itself moved from gold to silver in 1931. And because India was a colony, India moved to silver standard along with Britain. And that bet turned out to be the wrong bet. Yeah.
And Saifuddin, I remember Saifuddin mentioning India and China did the same thing, from moving from gold, not moving from gold, but being in silver standard for longer than they, longer than everybody else in the Europe when they moved to gold.
Yeah, I was about to add that. I think India and I was confused whether it's China or Japan, but there was one East Asian country. But you're saying China? Yes, it was China. I think these were the last two countries, last two at least relevant countries that moved off the silver standard.
And
While we are at this,
one of the reasons
I
that
just
I think India and China did that was because uh, silver was at such a discount compared to gold that people thought there's an arbitrage opportunity in taking the bet on silver standard. That was not true, as it happens with the strong network effects and all the other things. That was a wrong bet to take. Also, because Britishers pushed these countries to take that kind of bet.
while we are at it, anybody has read or recommend any historical Indian economic book? I couldn't come up with a
I
single one.
recently found one. So a friend shared it with me, but I have not read it so far. But I'll share it with you in the chat right now.
Thanks a lot, Shayan. Yeah.
Also, before industrial revolution really kicked off, the industrial means demand for silver was not there, and it was more like a monetary metal.
And rupiah is apparently called. It's translated as silver. It seems.
It's translated as silver.
Yeah.
Wow.
From original word is thaler, THALER, and that means silver as well. So the silver is very, very interesting in that sense, because dollar, the root word is thaler. That's a German word or word, I think.
Wow. So I've shared that book. So recently somebody shared it with me and said that every Indian Bitcoiner should read this because a lot of people think that there's not enough presence of the hard money school of economics. I don't know if it's Austrian school, but it's somebody told me that it's about pre-market economy and hard money standard, and it's written by Aditya Bala Subramanian. So he recently shared it with me, and he's recommending it to all Indian Bitcoiners.
How old is the book?
I'm trying to scroll through it. So I've shared it in the chat. I'm yet to find out. I think it was written in somewhere in the 70s. So it also references the
That's not
Rothschild
very
family.
old. He's I think he's talking about a book written before British Kingdom or even before uh, Mughals or even before the slave dynasty's migration.
Yeah, 70s also will be okay. I mean, but older the book, better it would be is what I'm thinking. Like if the book lives for so long, then it has to be good.
Right, that makes sense. But yeah, I'll try to cover up some of it and try to come back if it's relevant to this group or discussion. Okay, let's go ahead for now. But yeah, feel free to continue discussion at any point. So price and value. In our example, Adam and Beth were unhampered in their economic exchange, a free market transaction. It's a highly simplified example, but simplifying is not a problem. It's an advantage because it allows us to identify the core processes and mechanisms. We would not have gained any additional understanding by complicating the exchange example with regulations, license requirements, legal definitions, health directives, taxes, etc. Including those things would in fact have made it more difficult to figure out what was actually going on. There would have been too many things involved that could have affected Adam and Beth's decision making. So this goes on to highlight the problem with the fiat system, that most people think that money or finance is too complicated for them, so they end up outsourcing the responsibility or trust to someone else. And this is because of the various restrictions and regulations, that the free market economy is an experiment that we have never really seen in the world, at least for the foreseeable, for the near recent past. So it makes sense to study the exchange or just an exchange without complicating factors, so that we can learn the meaning of the exchange as such. This also means that we can add more factors to see how they can change the outcome and learn how those factors relate to or impact the exchange. We do this step by step, starting from the core and then adding additional factors. If we do not understand the exchange itself, then we cannot understand how other things affect it either. So yeah, so as subjective as value is, we are now trying to understand the exchange itself from the lens of human action. Perhaps Beth is a dairy farmer who really likes apples that Adam grows in his orchard and would be willing to exchange up to a whole gallon, 4 quarts of milk to get a single apple. Maybe she thinks Adam's apples are that good. Paying a quart is therefore a great deal for her. No wonder she's okay with the exchange. But the same is also true the other way around. We must conclude that Adam too considers 1 quart a good price, then go through with the exchange. He values 1 quart of Beth's milk higher than the one apple. If he didn't, the exchange would not take place. So while it is true that Adam could have received more milk for the apple, 4 times as much, the quart he gets obviously makes the exchange worth his while. Perhaps he would have been willing to pay 2 apples for a quart of milk, then paying only one apple is still a good deal from the perspective of his personal valuation. So in a free market, negotiation will take between two adults. So it's of course in the best interest of them to come up with the best exchange that they personally value. But we do not need to know Adam and Beth's actual valuation. In fact, they will not need to know it themselves. All that matters is that they both consider the exchange worth it. The price they pay will not be higher than the valuation of what they get in return. For instance, if Adam would not have accepted anything under 5 quarts of milk for an apple, then there would have been no exchange, because that wouldn't be worth it to Beth. Seems obvious? Yes, but we have learned a lot by elaborating on what must be the case for an exchange to happen. We have established the necessary conditions for exchange. Both parties must expect to gain from it. The price they each pay cannot be higher than their respective valuations of what they get in return. And distinguish between voluntary exchange, which must be for mutual gain, and involuntary transfer, such as theft. While we haven't elaborated on the latter, it's easy to see that neither party or both would go through with an exchange that is not to their benefit unless coerced, or if they are tricked somehow, or if there is fraud involved. So yeah, again, just stressing on the axiom, which I think is the defining factor for somebody who understands Bitcoin or somebody who does not understand Bitcoin, is that human action is purposeful behavior. So unless you are coerced, tricked, or defrauded, you will not ever act in a way which you did not mean to, because that's on you now. So yeah, the last bit was just my opinion, but this goes on to show that there could only be 3 reasons that restrict humans from acting in their own best interest. Or by best interest, I do not mean that they will necessarily derive the value that they expected out of the outcome, but they will at least be acting out of their own accord. So it's the best interest in allowing them to act. Yeah. Okay, let's go with price mechanism now. Quick pause in case somebody wants to highlight how I failed to articulate this last point or something else. Okay, let's go ahead. Price mechanism. Let's start a third person, Charlie, who grows pears. Beth fancies this delicious novelty and gradually trades all her milk for a full basket of pears. That's 3 gallons, 12 quarts for 15 pears. Adam then comes along and tries to repeat yesterday's exchange with Beth, but Beth is already out of milk. The following day, Adam visits Beth earlier to get a chance to buy milk before Charlie gets it all. Beth likes Charlie's pears better than apples, but Adam says he's willing to offer Beth 2 apples for a quart of milk. Since her milk now buys twice as many as apples as before, she considers it. Oh. Sorry, yeah, we were here. The simple example is now providing insight into how the price mechanism works. Prices are exchange ratios. They are not determined at random, but by people's ranking of different goods. We can see that there are limits to where the prices might end up. Beth's limit is a gallon of milk per apple. She doesn't think paying more would be worth it. But with the new opportunity to exchange for pears, Beth no longer considers apples worth buying even at the price of 1 quart of milk. This is obvious from her buying only pears yesterday. Her valuation of an apple might not have changed, but she values the deal she can get for peers higher. Our purchasing decisions are based on such comparisons of value. They are relative. We pursue what we value most, and the prices we pay are limited by our valuation of what we get and what we offer as payment. We can use this example to establish what the free market exchange ratios, prices between apples, pears, and milk would be, given Adam, Beth, and Charlie's current valuations. To Beth, it is worth it to exchange 1 quart of milk for 1 apple, but not if she can get 5 pears for a gallon of milk. This is a better deal for her. Adam is now offering 2 apples for each quart of milk, which Beth is considering. If she takes the deal, then it would appear Beth values pears somewhere between 1 and 2 apples. We cannot be more exact than this, even if we assume that Beth's taste for apples and pears doesn't change. What we can do is record the exchange ratios over time. It seems an apple exchanged at 1 quart of milk on day one, 5 pears exchanged for a gallon of milk on day two, and 2 apples exchanged for a quart of milk on day three. But we did not observe and do not know anything about the limits of the three people's valuations or how they could have changed over time. This is the logic of prices. Add more people and more goods, and it will be more difficult to keep track of everybody and everything. But the mechanism is the same. Prices are exchange ratios. This is true even if everybody starts using one of the goods as a common medium of exchange. For example, money. If everybody starts referring to prices of goods in terms of how much milk it takes to buy them, then it will be much easier to compare prices. But prices are still exchange ratios, and exchanges are still for mutual gain. So I had one overarching question. It might be too simple, it might be too complex, but is somebody able to articulate in the best way to a layman what drives Bitcoin's price up and down? Is it just demand and supply? How are the financial markets able to manipulate it, if at all?
I think, I mean, mostly it is determined by exchanges right now. So it's basically, I believe it is hope that it will somehow the price will increase, right? And people are expecting Bitcoin halving also right now. I mean, at least in the next year, right? So it's basically more based on hope only. Most people don't. I don't think majority of the people think about the freedom Bitcoin gives.
I personally too feel there's no one answer to this question. If there are 100 people buying Bitcoin, they might have 100 different reasons that convince them to buy Bitcoin. So I personally have always been of the opinion that there's no such thing as intrinsic value, and intrinsic value is arbitrary. I mean, it varies from person to person. Like if you ask me why do I buy Bitcoin, what is one thing that excites me to buy Bitcoin? For me, where Bitcoin completely stands out and why I am at peace and at rest putting my savings in Bitcoin is that I feel Bitcoin is the first and I believe the last finite monetary unit, because there are only going to be 21 million Bitcoins and never more than that, which is absolutely unprecedented. Like gold is scarce, real estate is scarce, diamonds are scarce. Whether they're naturally scarce or artificially scarce is irrelevant, but eventually they're scarce. So we've had a lot of scarce monetary units, but for the first time in the history of notable and documented human history, we have something which is finite. We have never, ever, ever had any monetary unit that has been finite. Gold comes closest to being finite with an inflation rate of 2%, like 1.5 to 2% of the existing gold in the world is produced every year. But for the first time in human history, we have something that reaches a certain level, and after that, no matter what you do, it is never, ever, ever going to increase, which is absolutely unprecedented, unique, and that is why I'm comfortable, and that is why that is what justifies Bitcoin's price to me. That this absolute unique attribute of Bitcoin, that it is the first and probably the last finite monetary unit that humans have ever known.
Just a PS, if diamonds are not scarce, De Beers, it's a South African monopoly and they control the supply of diamonds. And
True, and that is why I said whether they are naturally scarce or artificially scarce is irrelevant. Diamonds are artificially scarce. Gold is naturally scarce.
yeah, and even apparently, even gold can be artificially manufactured, but it's not cost effective, it seems. It's not cost effective
Yeah.
as the cost of making artificial gold is almost same as the market price of gold.
Are you
Right,
sure
like
it can be artificially manufactured? Because gold is an element on the periodic table, right? So I think it's
Apparently,
natural.
done by using huge amount of energy.
Right.
I very recently came across this, but it's true apparently.
I mean, yeah, to a point also that it's like other than Bitcoin, there is no way about anything scarce on earth that we can verifiably say, right? Bitcoin is the only thing by definition is something that you can verify on your laptop by running a Bitcoin node and checking the source code. So just by that understanding, it's very literal in that sense that there is nothing else that we can verifiably say is scarce in this universe other than Bitcoin itself. So for gold, we don't know how much gold Earth is actually having or how much gold there is in the universe to mine.
And Shayan, did you say about price manipulation in
Yes, so
Bitcoin?
this is something I hear a lot that a lot of people in financial markets. So I think Lynn Alden is the only sane voice that I found that she's able to articulate to a certain extent that all of this is a facade. So she does not go too much into how because it's speculation driven primarily. But I see a lot of people trying to explain how hedge funds and investment banks are able to manipulate the prices of assets. And other than the Fed controlling the interest rates, I'm not able to understand how manipulation in the economy takes place in the
So,
sense of.
so there is this book called Gold Wars by Ferdinand Lips. It's a really long. It's not really long, but it's a very. He drags the thing out of nothing. But basically, what he comes down to is how gold price was manipulated. Not manipulated. How gold price was subdued from early 19th from early 1900s to even now. What it comes down to is paper gold. So in the same way, I believe paper Bitcoin is being traded right now in exchanges.
Exactly. This is what I was trying to get at. Yes. So I think the current price is $60,000 per paper Bitcoin. So it's like not 21 million Bitcoin. It's per whatever supply is because you can never know how much paper Bitcoin there is. So unless there's a renaissance in human consciousness that suddenly all participants in the economy understand the value of self custody, then we can never know how much Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin at least in dollar terms, is reflecting the actual scarcity of Bitcoin.
Probably Coinbase falling down would.
Yeah, it will take a lot of. I actually think it will take generations, or maybe at least till all of us are old, because it will take. I think Coinbase fails. I think it will either be bailed out, or there will be another exchange. Binance will. I don't know. These questions, I think it will take multiple crises because we have observed that humans quickly forget crises after a few years. So it will take generations for people to start to question what self-sovereign money is.
There was a huge amount of traction for self custody after what was that? What was the Japanese exchange? I forget.
Mount Gox.
Yeah, Mt. Gox. After the Mt. Gox failure, there was a huge movement for self custody after that. So the same way a Coinbase failure would do.
Right. I think yeah,
Even after FTX failed, there was like
exactly.
a huge exponential growth in ledger sales. Like a lot of my friends that are shitcoiners after FTX fell, they were all calling me like, "What hardware wallet should I buy?" I mean, Ledger was the only option for them because they were shitcoiners. But yeah, if you probably browse an article, Ledger's sales literally skyrocketed, and you would never have seen a Ledger on Amazon. Now you go to Amazon India, you'll find them selling ledgers over there. You go to airports in Dubai, they're selling ledgers over there. So, and this happened after FTX collapsed.
Yep. I think that's why I'm the only exchange I'm fan of is Bull Bitcoin because Francis is openly saying that I can't wait to get out of business when people finally do not need me anymore. So we're still a long way because every time so Mt. Gox happened, then FTX happened in a larger magnitude. So people, and I think at least for the next few months, at least questioned what FTX, Bitcoin, crypto in their mind represent. But we're back to the same business. So most people are still using Binance. Most people still use Coinbase to hold their Bitcoins.
Yeah, I think ETFs are a good enough solution for exchange Bitcoin. Like, why would you register, do KYC separately, hold Bitcoin, and leave it at exchange when you can have paper Bitcoins?
Right.
No, right. ETF, there is no exit. You don't get Bitcoin back. You only get fiat.
Huh, but
So
the folks who are leaving their Bitcoin on exchange, what are they hoping to get? Nothing.
no, in an exchange you can withdraw the Bitcoin, right? In ETF you can't withdraw the Bitcoin.
That's a good point. Even on Coinbase, you can withdraw Bitcoin, but you cannot do it with the ETF.
Yeah, in that case, you should go
ETF
for
is only
a.
for price exposure in dollar terms
Yeah, my
to
point is, if you
Bitcoin
were
only.
to leave your Bitcoin at an exchange, you are better off buying Bitcoin ETFs, because in that case, at least you are there's some sort of insurance kicking in, so that if it gets liquidated, the US government or US Fed is going to print the money and give you your money back, at least your money back. With exchanges
Yeah,
going
but
bust, you don't even have that
uh,
security. So if you were
I mean
to,
the point,
huh,
like when a person like you and me, like we would buy Bitcoin because we want Bitcoin, right? Like in the bull case, we don't want the, like let's say Bitcoin, when Bitcoin hits, not if when Bitcoin hits $100 million per Bitcoin, you don't want $100 million, right? You want the Bitcoin, right?
no, in that case, I will not leave it at exchange. I'm talking about
I
people
think
who
I think
leave
the
their Bitcoin at
people that
exchange.
either buy BTS, they want dollars. Mango. That's what I feel. These are the people that want dollars. They don't want bitcoins. People who actually want bitcoins, most of them have it in their wallets. People who leave it on custodial exchanges, or people who leave them ETF, at least as of today, majority of them do want dollars. They want to exit from Bitcoin. They just want to bank in on what they refer to as a bull market, and then at some point in time dump their bitcoins and move out of it.
Yep.
Yeah. I was just saying that ETF is not better than buying in an exchange. Exchange is always better than ETF.
So I think Setu is comparing ETF to holding it on Coinbase. So if you just hold it on Coinbase and do not withdraw, then it's better to do it on the ETF, because you can. It's easier to set it up in terms of convenience. So the only person who is holding their Bitcoin on an exchange is somebody who is favoring convenience over what Bitcoin provides to him. So the comparison is not for the people here, because clearly all of us understand the importance of self custody, because otherwise you're just speculating on the price of Bitcoin, and to each his own. If you want to do that, go ahead. And for that, ETF might be better than doing it on Coinbase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think
And
somebody
also,
else. Yeah.
like what Faisal mentioned, right? The recent trend with hardware wallet and self custody and exchange, the the Bitcoin balances in exchange apparently has been decreasing around the same time, around 2021, 2022, I guess.
Right. Yep.
And that trend is quite evident from the chart I saw on Twitter yesterday, because the exchange balance has always been going up, and since around that time it has been going down substantially, like 20-30% down.
Yeah,
So
when
what you're
I
saying is that all exchanges have an on-chain address that you can track their total balance.
No, it's done by chain analysis mostly.
Okay. Right.
and it's actually surprising, like when I first found out exchange, like in 2020 21, exchanges used to only control 15% of the total supply of Bitcoin, which is like a very small amount. And if you, I'm not following that, I have not followed that
Hmm.
number, but like if it is going down, then it's actually not that big a volume. I mean, it's still a big volume. 2 million Bitcoins on exchange is still a big enough number, but as compared to what a normal person will think, it's like not so many people are out there who are dumb. Like majority of them have it in their cold storage and are keeping it
Hmm.
safe.
Right.
Yeah, I think currently around 10, approximately 10% of the Bitcoin is at exchanges. The rest is not.
Oh, wow.
And the amount of Bitcoin that is created every day, the amount of Bitcoin that these ETFs are eating up is 10 times the amount of Bitcoin that is created every day. So once this amount of Bitcoin that is available on the exchanges, let's say it gets usurped, and then the ETFs are still as hungry as they are, then the price mathematically should go up 10 times, because the number of bitcoins that the ETFs are eating up every day is 10 times the number of Coinbase reward. That is 10 times the number of ETFs that the miners are mining right now. And after, I think, the halving, it will be 20 times.
So what does this statistic represent, that there are 10 times as many ETFs than the Bitcoin being produced? I don't understand. So how are they able to?
If the ETFs are buying 10 bitcoins every day, the miners are producing only 1 bitcoin.
Okay. So how are they able to produce more units? I mean, it feels like a scam
They're
to me,
not. They're
because.
not. They are buying it from exchanges, and these Bitcoin
Okay.
belongs to people like you,
Okay.
retail users, right? So their ETFs are buying it from retail users from exchanges.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
As far as I heard through podcasts, they the ETFs don't handle them, or neither do they buy and do they manage the liquidity themselves. For example, if BlackRock is the ETF, they don't own any. They have a custodian. Coinbase is their custodian, and they also don't do open market operations. I think JP Morgan is doing the open market operations for BlackRock. So they just tell them that I want to create so many units, and then there is a mechanism which kicks off and it does it.
Yeah, right. I guess what I meant when I said they buy it from exchanges is not like they actually go in and buy it. Uh, there are some, for example, there's one, I'm not getting the name. Fidelity. Fidelity does its own custody. They don't have custodian. But for most of the ETFs, Coinbase is their custodian and Coinbase manages their bitcoins.
Right. So, right. But I think the spot ETF represents T+1 settlement, right? So I think even though BlackRock is not custodying the liquidity, there still needs to be an on-chain transaction made, right? I think I don't know if on-chain transaction, but Coinbase needs to is it only that Coinbase is moving between the accounts from BlackRock to some other account? Is there anybody aware of how ETFs are accounted? What does T+1 settlement mean?
I think Coinbase is their custodian, like Coinbase could be mine or your custodian.
Okay, so basically T+1 settlement just means that Coinbase is moving receipts in their accounts. There's no actual on-chain
Yes,
transaction being made. Interesting. Yeah.
no, I mean, there has to be an on-chain transaction being made. I mean, like for instance, you and I go and set up an account with Coinbase and we purchase Bitcoins. We can hold them in a wallet to which Coinbase is a custodian. So these people, these ETFs, I'm sure do have addresses, but those addresses are related to wallets where Coinbase is a custodian.
Right, but
It basically means you don't have the private keys. Basically, somebody else holds the private keys on your behalf of the wallet.
Basically, I don't think BlackRock demands a private key from Coinbase. They just have a contract with Coinbase saying that at any given time, if my ledger says this many bitcoins is with me, you'll have to produce me that many bitcoins. So I think that is
Right.
likely to.
Right. And just to answer your question, Drew, so if you understand Bitcoin, the best time to buy Bitcoin was yesterday, and the best time to buy is right now. So Bitcoin is literally it's not even in use by 0.01% of humanity. So all of us are very early.
We started at 59.9 and now it's 61.258 on my monitor.
Yeah, there is one ETF fund which has exposed their on-chain address.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Yeah, somebody also said.
The people have been sending 69 sats to that.
So yeah, somebody said that you can actually live track the settlement on their on-chain address. They only use one on-chain address to do that. So
yeah, since people have been donating sats to that address, that is the only ETF which is over collateralized.
Right.
Imagine. Is there a way?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mango. Was it you? Is there a way to know like how much collateralized a certain ETF is?
Only one of the ETF has exposed their address. I'm not sure which one. Probably you can just Google search it and
I think
find
it's
it.
Bitwise.
I don't know.
I think it's Bitwise, BITW. But but if they have exposed their address, why will they collateralize it? Because then the confidence in their ETFs will go down, right? So they will have to keep it at 100% plus extra donations, 100% plus extra donations. So then it might be over collateralized. But like they can't do it.
As per book, they are supposed to keep one to one peg, right?
As per books, and
ETF
they have also opened it, right? So people can see if they're not following the books.
Actually, I'm not sure if people can know because we don't know how many customers have bought how much, right? We don't have information of that. We only know how many bitcoins they hold, but we don't have information of how much dollars they gotten.
You can look at their market cap. You can look at their market cap and know this much volume of Bitcoin has been purchased from them. So if the Bitcoin that they hold is not commensurate, you can know that they are collateralizing.
I don't think so, but the audit relationship is between the ETF and SEC is what
Yeah,
I
yeah. Like it'll be in their books, right? So I am a customer of some ETF fund. I send in $1 million to them. That information is not never comes out. Only when they buy BTC from the market, and after buying BTC, only then they will expose that we have bought so many BTCs, and only then the public will get to know.
Yep, I did expect today's session to be a lot about Bitcoin's price because this is my first when I entered Bitcoin, when I started asking the questions, it was at the peak of the last bull cycle. And interestingly, it was not because of the bull cycle or the hype of Bitcoin. It was literally just one random school that I found, Andres Antonopoulos. And I imagined Bitcoin to just be following a natural adoption curve of anything basically. I did not even study the adoption curves of technologies historically. So I imagine that Bitcoin is only going up because this Michael Saylor now talking full time. There's a nation state called El Salvador looking to. I don't think it was legal. It was legal tender in November 21. Was it the peak? I don't remember that. But I thought that this is now only going up, and then I saw there's something called a bear market. There's something called a bull cycle. The whole cycle is been happening for the last 15 years. So so this is the first time now I'm seeing coming out of the bear. So when I was actually learning about Bitcoin, that okay, there's a bear market, there's a bull market, and not just a linear adoption of Bitcoin. But I think
I personally feel, yeah, please go ahead.
and I was just saying one last thing that I also started reading recently about the logarithmic a price adoption of Bitcoin. What that means is that the volatility and the magnitude of it is reducing, and it's apparently a natural curve in historically of the internet or of any network, telephonic, electronic, I mean electricity grids. So Bitcoin, because human greed, so money is different from other networks, for example. So of course the highs are too high and it eventually crashes down to much. So there's much more volatility compared to any other adoption of any other technology. But it's still following the same logarithmic curves in terms of if you zoom out long enough.
I mean, I will add one more thing. Also, if you are planning to buy, don't expect Bitcoin price to go down so much like before, because I think this price was somewhat achieved in 2021 itself, right?
Right.
Yeah, then that, I mean, two times it won't go down so much. So this is still a good time to buy.
And Mango, I'm not being a bear. I'm literally telling her to buy Bitcoin right now. It doesn't
Anybody who
matter.
feels there is an appropriate time or a specific time or a good time to buy Bitcoin and there is a not good time to buy Bitcoin is a bear. I'm with you on this matter. There's no good
Yeah.
time, there's no bad time. Every time is a good time to buy Bitcoin.
Exactly. I think the best idea we could think of is just hold your savings in BTC
Right.
and
Use Bitcoin as your savings account, and your spending has to be in INR, unfortunately.
exactly, yeah. Spending has
Yeah.
to be in INR. So yeah, so that's why I was calling Delson also a bear because he has money in his account to buy BTC from others.
Yeah.
But I think there is a bull time and a bear phase. For example, every time that the halving approaches or the time around halving, it
It's
sort of
going up
shoots.
forever, Saurabh. It's going up forever.
No,
It's
sort of
going
you are
up.
making the same error that we discussed in this session that just because you're looking at some data and you're able to see some pattern over the last 15 years, you're making some deductions. So I'm just
No,
trying to
what
fit
I'm
in this
saying is
session in.
what people. This is
Yeah.
what the nature of people is like. In the times of euphoria, they are extremely euphoric, and the times of dread, they actually do not like it at
No.
all.
So my
And
question is that last time the crash happened because of crises, because of liquidity crisis. I don't fully understand it, but Lynn Alden says in her analysis that the Bitcoin price is actually more correlated to the liquidity cycles in Fed's balance sheet than the halving event. But what I do not understand, why does Bitcoin come down, right? So come up makes sense. More. So I was not a Bitcoiner 2 years ago, right? Now I am. Now I proudly call it because I understand the scam that is
I
fiat, even
think
if I do not understand every detail of Bitcoin. But so more people are definitely coming in. There are less people going away than there are people coming in, right?
I think
So why does Bitcoin crash?
there's an example in this book itself. I don't know if it's chapter 4 or chapter 5, wherein they talk about when the money printing, like when you double the amount of money in the circulation, not everything's price goes 2x. That money
Right.
initially buys out, like you might not buy apples with it, but you might buy an expensive school for your kids, right? Because now you have double the money. So some products, their prices shoot, whereas other products, that shoots like increasingly, or like it does not happen instantaneously. Similarly, when the Bitcoin supply shock comes, even though the market understands, that's what my theory is. Even if the market knows it, like the supply shock is going to come, it does not change the price in that ratio. Probably market does not time it, or market does not price it exactly how it should. But if you look at, uh, and that's what, like, one of the theory of the additional Bitcoin that comes into circulation divided by the total supply that is available for the Bitcoin, does have a strong correlation with the price of the Bitcoin, right? And by that logic, every time that there's a supply shock, because Bitcoin becomes scarce, more people sort of, there's as much demand as there was, the prices shoot, and because prices shoot, people get euphoric about it. A lot of people who had never heard of Bitcoin come into that whole Bitcoin hype, uh, at that point in time, and they buy into Bitcoin, and that does not sustain itself forever, because after a certain point in time, it's what I feel, at certain point in time people are clear that this is the supply schedule now. This is the supply schedule. 6.25 is what it is going to be, or 3.7625 is what it is going to be, and all the
I
hype dies down.
I personally feel this is it's like having kind of a high time preference, sort of, because like Shreyan mentioned, or he relayed a quote from Raj that Bitcoin is a 200-year-old experiment. People who truly value Bitcoin are not in Bitcoin for the next 2 years, or next 4 years, or next something. People who truly value Bitcoin are in Bitcoin for generations. They are in Bitcoin for their retirement. They want their inheritors to have Bitcoin 50 years from now. It's a very long term plan. So I really don't care what the Bitcoin price will be in April or in December or in January. If I retire on Bitcoin, it will be absolutely irrelevant at what price I bought it in 2024.
That is 100% true. Yeah.
Right, I think that's the definition of Bitcoiner and just a Bitcoin user. That Bitcoiner believes in the potential of Bitcoin. They believe that it's worth their time to see if Bitcoin can be successful. And Bitcoin user is somebody who, for their own reasons, uses Bitcoin.
Also, imagine when Elon Musk starts talking like Michael Saylor. I mean, it's I don't I don't see how there will be a bear market after that, or even Saudi.
I'll be very happy. I mean, I'll be the happiest if it's people like you and me that take Bitcoin to its absolute potential, and not people like Saylor or Musk or Buffett or the Fed or the SEC or the governments. I'd be very happy if it's common people like you and me that take Bitcoin to its utmost potential. And that is, I think, what the case is. Like, Bitcoin is what it is. I mean, institutional money started coming in 1 month ago, 2 months ago, right? Bitcoin touched 1 trillion in 2021, and I believe that the majority of Bitcoin's market price came because of common plebs like you and me, like common 9 to 5 workers, plumbers or Uber drivers, or carpenters or teachers or CAs and engineers, like common people who were saving their hard-earned money and buying Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin reached 1 trillion absolutely without a single penny coming from the institutional money, which is absolutely unprecedented. And I think that is how Bitcoin should go forward. I think common plebs should always be at the forefront of it. We don't need Elon Musk's, and we don't need Bukeles, and we don't need Michael Saylors. If they come, good, great. But I think it's the plebs that should be the driving force of Bitcoin.
Just to add to that, Faisal, I 100% agree with what you said. It is the individuals who should value Bitcoin, because individuals have principles. Institutions don't have principle.
True, true. They profit at any cost.
I think Rue had a question. She put it up on chat. Probably she can't voice it, and and I think Mango and me and Shreya responded, and she found some of the responses a little. Yeah, she felt that we are not giving her the exact answer or helping her out in figuring that out. So Rue, we have different sets of beliefs around Bitcoin, and we are all approaching it a little differently. And I think that as many Bitcoiners, as many voices, as Austrian economics tells us, we all value it differently. And it's a function of our all of us individual conviction and all of us ability to sort of take the risks, right? So I think you should definitely vet what suits what kind of Bitcoin holding or Bitcoin selling thing suits you, or if you're someone who wants to sort of live on Bitcoin and expend it as expenses come. And with that kind of conviction, it will come to you as to whether this price or whether this time is a good time. But generally, I feel it's very difficult to figure out what is a good time to buy, and so you should have a DCA kind of approach, and you should have maybe yeah, that's what my general recommendation to most of the folks is. And
DCA, I wouldn't recommend DCA at all. DCA at all, unless that's what the conviction level you are at. Once you figured out that Bitcoin is not going to die and fiat is going to die for once you're sure about this, I think 100% all in is the only way out, and that's probably the best winning way.
yeah, true. I don't recommend that though I practice it not completely but closely myself. But I don't recommend it because like everyone has their own risk appetite. They have families and they have responsibilities. So I don't know. That's not something that I recommend though. It's what I partially follow.
Like I would like to add one point here, right? So here, like the best way to think about this, at least in my opinion, is if you want a calm life, peaceful life, right? Imagine like 100 200 years ago, like let's say how your ancestors would have accumulated gold. So they kind of know that gold will be the something, like whenever they have the excess money, they buy gold. So that's it. If you know that you have excess money, buy Bitcoin. That's the only thing, right? And if you, let's say, if you need some money, let's say you have some urgent expense, right? Let's say 2 years ago, 2 years ago, when I want to shift my home, I sold some of my Bitcoin for the cash. And as soon as I get the cash back, like I said, I started earning some more money as I keep started buying money, right? All the other systems like DCA, all those any trading techniques, they are probabilistic mechanisms, right? And people see, the thing is, as much as the traders, they want to make you believe that they can predict the market somehow. No one can truly predict it because there are so many factors, right? Like everyone said, whenever the price goes up, there are so many new people are coming in, so the demand naturally increases. And the exchanges, they also manipulate the Bitcoin supply that they actually have. Okay, so they don't actually have to expose how much Bitcoin they have. They can they can have 100 Bitcoins, but within the exchange they will sell 1,000 Bitcoins to the people who are using that. So that's why it's not actually, that's why it is not safe to have, that's one of the main reasons it's why it's not safe to have your Bitcoin in exchanges. Okay, so the best thing is, right, if you have some money, excess money, keep buying Bitcoin, but don't you also need a life, right? Yeah, I spent so much crazy amount of money eating itself. Okay, I have, why I'm saying is, I have seen, like in 2020 bull market and 2020 2021, I have seen people like who claim that they are eating like noodles and ramen so that they can buy Bitcoin, right? They want to say much. See, that's the first time I started buying Bitcoin. I did not even have had a job that time, right? But still I was spending like 15,000 rupees to eat every month, but I only bought like 15,000 for 15,000 rupees. For that amount only I bought Bitcoin at that time. Then later I will keep earning money, I started keep accumulating the Bitcoin. So that's my philosophy, right? I'm not going to give up my life for Bitcoin. Okay, for me my life is
Cook yourself, Delson. Cook your food yourself. Don't spend 15,000 on food.
I cook my food myself only. Yeah, see, every day I eat 1 kg of beef. Okay, do the maths. So
Mango's advice is on a completely status, like a completely different level.
no,
I hope
I
you
eat
buy
beef.
basic amenities, man. Mango, at least I hope you eat 3 times a day.
I eat crazy food. Like I play tennis like two minimum 2 hours every day. I do crazy like workout and everything. I eat. Like, I mean, I've been doing this for like 10, 15 years. So from 2012, I've been eating like this only. So yeah, that's about me.
I hope this elephant does not represent the fact that you eat bananas, man.
So I have a chair. I'm sitting on a chair. So yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I do
Alright.
have a chair.
That
It's over to the
actually,
host, I did.
I think we have deviated a little bit from our book, but that reminded me of a book that I recently read. It was Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and it does talk about aspects as to what money means to different people and how people go about managing it. And it's a beautiful book. If you have time, you should definitely read that out.
I think Matt Corallo also said this in an interview that when the bull market starts hitting, it's difficult even for the best developers who are cypherpunks to focus on their work because Bitcoin is money first and then technology. It's a consensus that we all come to, and then we see how we can actually implement it. So money, of course, affects human psyche a lot, and I hope, Ru, this discussion. So all of us here have been into Bitcoin for a while now, so it might come off as we are not being encouraging of new people asking questions, which might be a little.
It did actually. It did seem like that. I felt like you were all circle jerking your philosophies rather than helping me out, but it's alright. I'll do my own research to figure it out.
Hello?
I mean,
हाँ अजय जी
okay, we are 10 minutes
हेलो
over in the session, so
हाँ अजय जी
um,
कॉल
I'll
चल रही है आपको कॉल के बाद
just
कॉल
have
करूँ
some final comments and thoughts
हाँ
if
कॉल
somebody
चल
wants to
रही है
share it, and so next session will begin from
ठीक है
step-by-step method of understanding the example that we started off and how we arrive at price in the economy. Okay. Thank you guys for sticking around, and
Thanks
yeah,
for hosting, Shyam.
yeah
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks Shreyan
good night.
thank you everyone
Yes, good night, guys.